Welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast, a podcast that inspires and equips men to lead lives of intentionality and grow to their full potential. I'm your host, Jonathan McGinley, a life coach that helps men just like you create the life that you want and live a story of significance through my coaching and tools on intentionality. Thanks for joining and welcome to the show. All right, welcome to the show. I'm excited to be with you today and excited to have my guest, Carl Gronberg. Carl, how are you doing?
Jonathan, I'm grateful to be here.
So grateful to have you on here. Carl is he's special to me. I got introduced to him a couple years ago, and he's just been a mentor and an inspiration and a role model for me. And he is an executive coach. He works with high-level business owners and leaders, helping them get to where they want to go and to lead their organizations better. He's also part of the Maxwell leadership team and has helped organize and run Live to Lead events. And so he's passionate about leadership and passionate about helping men become the leaders they were supposed to be. So I'm excited to have Carl on here, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about leadership. So Carl, let's just dive right into it. I'm excited to pick your brain on this topic. So when you think about leadership, like how do you define leadership?
Well, heck of a first question, Jonathan.
We're coming out hot.
Let's jump right into it. So you and I have probably we've heard John Maxwell say that leadership is an influence, nothing more, nothing less. But when I look at leadership, I think that's a great start. But I look at leaders across our nation, around the world, and throughout history, and I'm intrigued by some impressive leadership qualities, but not for an impressive agenda or end. And take Hitler, for example, a phenomenal leader. From what I understand, I wasn't there, but from what I understand, he's extremely motivational. But his end goal was nothing we're impressed with. So when I think about leadership, I'll start with influence. Then the next thing I want to ask is, where are they taking their followers? What's their vision? That's got me real interested. Then I also want to know, what kind of culture are they building? Because in a culture, it's ultimately selfish, much like Hitler. I want my way and I'll sacrifice others. Or the other end of that spectrum is authentically caring. I like to use that term because love is so nebulous. But when a leader is authentically caring, they're doing everything they can to help their team members succeed. So there's influence, there's vision, there's culture, and then finally, I think what defines leadership is who's following. Because I love the statement. If you think you're a leader, but no one's following, you're probably just taking a walk.
For sure.
I just love that statement.
Good. That's good. Well, and I love that you know, those characteristics of a leader that you just mentioned in the areas in which we need to lead. I think a lot of times we think leaders are just people who are in positions, right? Can you kind of talk about that, of the difference between positional leadership and just leadership in general? Because I think what you just said, that makes me think that anyone could be a leader in their sphere. But a lot of times people don't identify as leaders unless they're in some sort of role that calls them a leader.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sometimes I work with people who are business owners, but they only own a portion of the company. And there's other people who own the majority of it. And so going back to that influence and the vision, when it comes to leadership, sometimes you need to lead up. You need to lead your leader. And the way you do that is, first of all, seeing if you can find their ultimate vision and then connect whatever you're going to be recommending to that ultimate vision as a question or some curiosity. Hey, boss, I was wondering if we focused a little bit more on equipping our team for success individually, if that would actually help us achieve the sales results that you and I want to see achieved. So that idea of leading up when is one that intrigues me. So there's leading up,
For sure.
there's leading to the side, and then there's leading those who report to us.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So that
That's really good.
did I answer your question properly then?
Yes, definitely. Yep. Well, it's very interesting. I love that concept of leading up, because I don't think many of us, including myself, really think about that much in terms of how we can help lead our leaders. Typically, that's not something that I ever even really think about too much. It's about how can I be a great follower. Um, but when you go back to your definition of leadership and all those characteristics, we can help lead our leaders. We can help lead those next to us, and we can help lead those who quote unquote should be following us, because leadership is just influence, right?
And
so
the interesting thing
it's very interesting.
When we're talking about leading up, if you have, I'm going to come back to that term that it's my number one core value: authentic care. I care from my heart, and I want what's best for my leader, the person I'm reporting to in that situation. I'll bring that into leading my family, my wife, my kids. When I ultimately have authentic care, I want their best interest. And then I connect that to where they're wanting to go. Oftentimes leaders in our country, they gosh, around the world too, in profit oriented organizations, the leaders are wanting to see a bottom line impact. They want to see the profits. They may want to see certain size sales, certain number of customers reached. So when you tie that care into ideas to help them get where they want to go, you'll find some really receptive ears. Now, sometimes there's some ego involved, but when you just put things out as an option, you might be surprised that in a month or two, the very person you've made that recommendation to comes up with a whole idea all by themselves, which was your idea, and you might have put it in their mind, and that's how they came across it. Hooray. Hooray.
Well, what you said is so important, of having genuine, authentic care, because I think a lot of times we, as leaders, can only want to push our agenda. In some ways, it having a vision is a part of being a good leader, but having authentic care for others is true leadership. And so I love that you put that in there. And all of these things that you're saying makes me think that each one of us is a leader in some capacity. And I think, for those listening, it's easy, if you're not in a position career-wise of leadership, to not think of yourself as a leader. But from everything that you're saying, it makes me think that all of us have some sort of position of leadership. There's someone that we are leading in our lives. And so I kind of want to dig into that, go that way a little bit. So this is the Intentional Man podcast. We got, our listeners are primarily men here. So when you think as a man and just what it means to be a leader as a man, what kind of comes to mind when you think about that?
So I work with men. I've coached women. I don't have a problem coaching women, but I'm trying to focus on that real sweet spot. And for me, that sweet spot is men in their 30s and 40s. They have a sense of leadership as a calling or as a responsibility. They want to use their leadership skills to actually improve the lives and quality of their followers. But for my particular clients, they not only want to be a business success, they want to be a home success, first in their marriage and then in their relationship with their kids. And so what I believe, and you're going to understand why I work with men, because I want to use an analogy or an example that I think a lot of men can relate to, and that's sex. Let's just talk sex for a second. When you think about sex, I don't know many men. Now I have the privilege of knowing some older men, and they're too old for sex. Frankly, I'm not I'm not desiring that right now. But when you think about quality sex, I'm going to come into authentic care. If you're going to have
Mm-hmm.
quality sex, you've got to have love, and love desires the best for the other person. And so I don't know of any man who aspires to impotence. And gosh, maybe this is going to be crossing into R, but we'll sort of PG. Is this okay, Jonathan?
Yeah, that's all right.
Edit me out if you don't want to go with this. When men want to really please their wife, if you will, they need to be strong. We don't want impotence. Men aren't looking forward to this for good sex. They want to be strong. Now, can they overuse their strength? Yeah, yeah. It's either brutality or thoughtlessness, selfishness, or downright rape. So that's an abuse of our strength. And we do strength pretty well. Typically, person to person, men are what? 30% stronger than women when it comes to musculature. So the question becomes, how do we use our strength out of authentic care? It's an intriguing question to ask.
That's a good question.
And to meditate on it, to just think about it. How do I use my strength to encourage my wife? Well, what I want to bring everything of me, focusing on her and her ultimate design, and what can I do to help her reach that? And that, a lot of us guys, we like to fix problems. I'm going to suggest a mind change from problems to possibilities. Right now, my youngest of my three kids is 26. He's the only one of my three that isn't married. And when I was a younger father, I was pretty strict, and everyone, all the kids had to do it my way, and it was all about being right. And then if something wasn't right, that was the problem. And then my kids needed to be fixed. They didn't like it. I don't recommend it at all. At some point, I moved into possibility thinking, and that was the intrigue of what my kids were capable of achieving. And so when I bring that intrigue, that curiosity around possibilities, then I get to team up with my kids and ask them and be intrigued and interested with them or in them, and about what they're capable of achieving. And my gosh, has that been fun with all three of my kids. And now my youngest, as he's at 26, starting to want to get married, and I get to bring intrigue with him and keep naming the talents that I see in him and encourage him to take those talents to new levels. So that's what I think about men. We bring our strength to help others be their best. Right now, we're in a transition. We'd come out to California to care for Gina's in-laws. Well, that mission is accomplished. We said goodbye to Mom 3 years ago and Dad earlier this year. And so that responsibility is done. Well, as we're making this transition, my wife is moving out of the caretaker role into one of how else will she serve? How else will she help others? And so my job is supporting everything I can to bring out the best in her. And Jonathan, I just want to tell you, it's a cool adventure. It is an awesome adventure to focus on my wife, her becoming her best, my two daughters, them becoming their best, along with their husbands. I've got two awesome sons-in-law, and to be intrigued with them becoming their best. And I've already mentioned my son. That's my thoughts about we as men, the unique things we have to bring. I got to add one more, and that is women have a whole different wiring. I really suck at being female, I just don't do woman. I just don't. I suck at it. I'm pretty content being a guy in guy skin and all that type of thing. But my gosh, the talents that women have, it's phenomenal. And so when we tap into their unique strengths and perspectives, does that make life an even richer adventure? And it's a word I love to own. Am
Mm,
I living an adventure?
wow.
I want to make sure I
Wow.
don't go too far off. Am I tracking with you?
No. Yes. No, that was great. I love that, of using your strength to bring out the best in someone else. I mean, what an amazing kind of definition of leadership. And as a man, of being authentic and being genuine, is having the curiosity. I heard you mention that a few times, of just being curious with people and looking for opportunities. Because I think in our minds, a lot of times leadership feels like it's pushing our agenda, right? Like that's what leaders do. They have the vision, they push their vision. But your vision is to bring out the best in the people that you love. And to do that, you have to be curious. And to do that, you have to support. And to do that, you have to look for their strengths. And to do that, you have to, look for the uniqueness in each person. I think that was something that you just said pretty well too, in terms of like, the way you act with your son is way different than the way that you're going to lead your wife. And so having that curiosity and the care, I think if you don't have the care to take the time to find out what is going to help make them the best, then I think you're missing great leadership opportunities. So thank you for that. Honestly, that was really awesome to think about. So let me ask you this, going back to this strength piece, because I think this is an important one to talk about, because I think it's hard sometimes as men. We feel this, like that we do have this strength, but there's this, I want to be a servant leader. I want to be a humble leader. Or there's I want to charge forth and be the leader who's leading with strength and vision and running everybody over. I think there's kind of this two sides, right? There's the really servant, humble leader who's just laying himself down, and the guy who's like really just charging through, not really having a care for people. So how do you find that balance of strength, but also humility, of really leadership and initiative, but also care and authenticity and being a servant?
There's a saying that I'll forego the story, and it was encouraged that I should own this personally, and it was, "Do not think more highly of yourself than you ought." Now, I was quite offended when that was first recommended to me, but in relationship to what you're talking about, that powering, if it's a selfish motivation, then all
Mm-hmm.
you're doing is you're using people. And it's a
Mm.
crappy statement to use someone. Unfortunately, there's that other end of the spectrum. Sometimes men can confuse this thing of humility by being they confuse it with weakness.
Right,
And
right.
I just want to let me make something crystal clear. In fact, I'll just ask you this question: when you think about living right now, Jonathan, and I know I'm springing something on you, but I'm going to spring something on you.
Mm.
What do you think you as a man right now, an excellent coach, an accomplished man, what do you desperately need right now? First thing that comes to your mind.
what do I, yeah. I think it popped in my head of just really good male friend. Well, the first was actually a really good mentor in my life, is honestly one thing I've been really thinking about, that I'm missing a little bit right now, of an older man that can really kind of walk with me on a consistent basis and show me the ropes. That's honestly one of the biggest things that I've been searching for recently.
So I'm going to go physiologically right now. Something you desperately need right now is O2.
Hmm.
Yeah, no oxygen,
There you go.
no life.
Yeah,
Now, the
that's for
reason it
sure.
doesn't come to your mind, doesn't come to my mind, is because there's plenty of it around. Now, if you
Right.
and I took up scuba diving, we would be much more cognizant about our desperate need for air. We'd be checking our air supply. How full is my
Yes,
tank?
sir.
How deep have I gone? Because I got to make sure I've got enough air. So, the reason I bring that up is when we can ask that question, what do I really need to be
Hmm.
successful? And I am spirit, soul, and body. And so when I lead well, I ask the questions, what do I really need? Somebody, who might satiate his pain with some alcohol might say, I need a drink.
Yeah.
But I would say what he really needs is purpose, and he needs good self-care. He doesn't need alcohol.
Yeah.
He needs some good food, some nutrients for his body so he can take good care of his body. So going back to this thing about the humble servant, humility isn't thinking um, less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. So if you're consumed with yourself, that's self-centeredness. But when you're thinking about what you need to be successful, I call that integrity. And there's a term I like to use. I call it the power of the invite. And if you'd like, I can tell you a quick story about that. My son and I, gosh, this is 12 years ago now, we were living in Colorado and we were hiking in the Rocky Mountains, and we came across the headwaters of the mighty Colorado River. Now, that Colorado delivers a lot of water to the southwest of the United States. And there we were looking down on this strong flowing stream, nothing like it is downstream, but right up there in the Rocky Mountains. It was a spring day and the sun was shining. And when the sun shines on a spring day in Colorado, it's warm in the shade. It's warm in the sunshine and cold in the shade. We came across this bridge, Jonathan, my son and I, and we looked down at this flowing water. We looked at each other and we said, we've got to go in. And so within 5 minutes, both he and I jumped in that water. I think he went first. I don't remember which one of us. We jumped in. The definition of snow melt. There was snow.
Oh, yeah. Cold.
Yeah, cold, about 33 degrees. And so we jumped in there. And I would like to tell you that I yelled from the pain, but that just would be dishonest. I screamed. Yeah, there's something feminine, huh? So there we were. We jumped in this water, and there were other people walking across the bridge. And people looked down and said, what are you doing? Are you crazy? I said, well, we're taking a refreshing dip. And yeah, we probably are crazy. You ought to try it. Come on down. It's awesome. Now, Jonathan, within 25 minutes, there was 25 people who had taken us up on our invitation. Perfect strangers. Not only did they jump in the water, but we said, hey, listen to this. There were rules. There was at least one rule. We said, it doesn't count unless your head goes under. And to a person, here we are, strangers, they're following our invitation. Come on in, you got to try it. It's awesome. And so within 25 minutes, here's this group of people sunning themselves on the side of a hill on a spring day in Colorado, laughing about the adventures that we had all shared of getting in frickin' cold water that hurt. It was so painful. Yeah. And so from that, I learned the term, the power of the invite. And I think as leaders, certainly with our wives and our children, we think about where are we going, and our invite to our wives, come live an adventure with me. Yeah. Kids, come live an adventure. Discover who you are, because there's nothing more satisfying than being who you are and making the world a better place through your own impact.
Wow. I love that. I love the just the wording and the picture there of an invitation, because I think it's easy to think that it's telling people where to go, but just that subtle flip of, hey, inviting them to something that's great, inviting them to something that you believe is where we can go. That's amazing. That's going to bring out your best self from what you talked about earlier. It's this invitation. Leadership is an invite. It's not a command. I think that's especially true in relationships. And I think, so thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a great just picture to kind of leave us with. When you think of leading, we got a lot of younger guys listening to this podcast. So some who are married, some who are not in relationships. When you think of leading your relationships well, what are some like just practical tools or tips or pieces of advice that you would give to a young man who's saying, hey, I really want to excel in this. I want to lead well. I want to care about them. I want to have the invitation. So can you kind of take us down to more of a practical level of what that can look like, or what's worked for you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. The practicals of a rich invitation is living your own successful life.
Yeah.
So the more you can get your life together, and if I'm just thinking of your listener right now. So I just like to say, take the time to think about your good habits that you want to foster. You want to use those and develop them. Write down those lists of strengths, good habits that you've got. And then write down the weaknesses. And so when you own those realities, keep focusing on those strengths of yours that you want to develop, and the weaknesses that you might need a mentor for, you might need a coach for, somebody who's going to help you get a grip of those things that are not serving you. My story includes some emotional abuse when I was 4 years old, which caused me to have panic attacks, thousands of panic attacks around the thought of dying. And those panic attacks lasted, 6 or 7 seconds. And I lived for 25 years on this planet, and not a soul. There was no one who knew about my panic attacks. They were so brief. And so, nobody recognized it. I didn't know what they were. I was 4 years old when they started. My gosh, no, I couldn't say, I'm having a panic attack right now. What I could say is, I'm experiencing what I think death is like, and it's horrific. So whatever is holding you back, whatever is holding our listener back right now, whatever it is, whether it's negative head trash, panic attacks, bad habits, weaknesses, thoughtlessness, self-centeredness, whatever it is, it's like, okay, well, welcome to the human race. If we're really going to be honest, we talked about, Jonathan, we talked about oxygen. Well, let me tell you what else I need. I need soap, water, deodorant, toilet paper, and mouthwash. Because without that, I smell like crap. And usually I use a slightly bit more vile word because it's just so honest. Soap, water, deodorant, toilet paper, and mouthwash. Because if I don't have that stuff, I stink. Now, somebody can live trying to pretend that they don't. And the only reason I say that is we're this mixture of dignity and depravity. And just because most of us here in the US have a ubiquitous supply, just like oxygen, of soap, water, deodorant, toilet paper, and toothpaste, we forget that we stink. So that recommendation to that young person is nurture your life so your life is satisfying you. You go to bed not every night, but consistently with a sense of satisfaction that you're making good choices for your own self. Because that gives you the moral authority to invite a woman to join you. To invite a woman, come live an adventure with me. This is where I'm going. This is where I believe my life is focused. I want you to join me. And when you join me, I'm going to love you well. and we're going to have a rich life together. We're not going to have a perfect life together because I'm not a perfect person and you're not a perfect person, but let's define what success looks like. Let's define this loving relationship and let's commit ourselves to that. Notice the invitation there. Come join me.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, Carl. This is great.
Thank
you so much. No, so good. I just, I love that you started there of you have to, what it made me think of was you have to be able to lead yourself well before you can really have an invitation to lead others well. It's kind of what I was thinking when you were talking about all that. To invite somebody to a life and to lead somebody, if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we don't have that moral authority, like you said, like why is anyone going to come join the adventure if our adventure is a train wreck?
Boy, that's well put, Jonathan. That's well put. And I think what happens, and frankly, when I proposed to Gina, there was a bit of over enthusiasm as far as who I was and where I was going. It wasn't horrible, but optimism is a good thing, but there's some places where it really sucks. One of them is when you're looking at the E on your gas gauge. The optimist goes, "Oh, I can make it to the gas station."
Yeah, that's me.
and then I just had to be honest. My wife was a little bit more conservative, a little bit more skeptical or pessimistic. She said, "We're down to a quarter tank. Why don't we fill up now while there's a gas station right there?" And so in my silliness or immaturity, my optimism was, "No, we'll make it." Well, there we are, stopped at the side of the freeway, and Carl's hoofing it for some gas. If I'd listened to my wife, it would have continued. So optimism isn't always the answer. I prefer it over pessimism, but I like the term realistic optimism. Okay, I think I was going off track there. Bring me on back here, John.
No, it's good. All right. So when we talk about leading ourselves well, what would you say are some key fundamentals, key components to making sure we're leading ourselves well and that we have that moral authority to then invite others to join us in our adventure?
That's a great idea or a great question. Let's see if we can break it down a little bit. So we live inside these things we call bodies. And so if we're fooling ourselves by eating crap, we're going to pay the piper sooner or later. Our whole health system is, I believe it's called the allopathic approach, which is treat the symptoms. So what I would challenge our listener to right now is be realistic. If you think you're going to have a healthy body by eating donuts, Twinkies, and soda pop, you're fooling yourself. You're just fooling yourself. So if you can't nurture your own body by caring for it, you're setting yourself up for failure. Your teeth are going to rot. Your blood pressure is going to skyrocket. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the generation of babies being born right now, like my 3 grandchildren, born within the past 2 years, their life expectancy is the lowest yet, at least in the last 50 years, maybe since tracking, because of the crappy food that we ingest, processed food, unhealthy stuff. So start with, are you actually nurturing your body? Then the next thing is, are you keeping it fit? Now, I want to tell you something. In my own life, I was really fit from the time I was 13 or 14. I was trying to be the world's best water skier. And water skiing is a great workout. When I gave up that passion, that's when I started to gain weight. And I was way confused. Gosh, I wish I had a coach in my life back then, because I was so confused. My purpose was gone. And all of a sudden, Jonathan, I couldn't stop eating because I was just lost. I was purposeless. And And food gave me some short-term satisfaction. It was a drug at that point. It wasn't nourishment.
Yeah.
It was a drug. And
Mm.
so when we aren't making healthy choices for ourselves, and I sure wasn't then, we just don't have the capacity, we don't have the moral integrity to help someone else. You know, that thing of love your neighbor as yourself. So I remember when I thought, okay, I need to start working out. Now, for the listener who hates to work out, I'm just going to say, find something you can do. I remember I love starting small, and I started to get back into health when my children were just toddlers. And I told my wife, I said, honey, I'm going to just take a 5-minute walk. And that's I did, just took a 5-minute walk. And that 5-minute walk, after a while, turned into a 10-minute walk. And then it turned into 5 minutes of jogging and 5 minutes of walking. And 30 years later, all of that turned into jogging to the top of a 14,000-foot mountain when I was living in Colorado. And then, I don't know, 6 months after that, I hiked down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and jogged out of it. It was a gas, by the way, freaking slow, but I did do it nonstop. Freaking slow.
That's amazing.
But it was nonstop. So the cool thing about that is
Mm-hmm.
it started with a 5-minute walk.
Yeah,
so,
that is really cool.
So coming back to, what does it take? I started with the body. Then there's this thing of your job. Now, let me describe compensation, Jonathan, in just 2 words. In the free enterprise system around the planet, all of us are compensated based on just 2 words: how well we deliver value. Think about it. Your name is Mark Zuckerberg. You delivered a little bit of value called Facebook to 1 billion clients. That's why he's worth so many billions of dollars. And so look at a pro, football quarterback who's paid, 30, 40 million a year.
Yeah.
The value that he's delivering, we don't determine value. The world determines value, and our world seems to really value football. So if you're really, really good as a quarterback, you're going to be paid tens of millions. If you work at a fast food joint, it's about what, 10, 12 bucks an hour, give or take. That's the value you deliver. No one's going to hire you at Club Mac, at McDonald's, or any other fast food place and say, I want to pay you $200,000 to cook my French fries for me. No, there's not enough value in it. Now, if you're a heart surgeon or a brain surgeon, there's a lot of value delivered to that patient.
No doubt.
And so the whole idea, when a young man is thinking about his life, he better figure out how he's going to deliver value. So you're taking care of your body, but you're also taking care of your finances. As best as I can tell now, living 6+ decades, we pretty much deal with money our whole life long. Might as well learn to deal with it well. And here's a question that somebody can ask. And I think every man, every person should ask this question of their employer. What could I do that would cause you to want to give me, fill in the blank, a $5,000 bonus, a $10,000 bonus? You're not saying, I just want you to give me money. You're saying, I want to earn it. I want to earn it. Is there anything that I could do? Is there anything that I could do that you would actually be happy to give me a bonus? By the way, here, let me offer you a $10,000 bonus right now. If you just refer someone who compensates me $100,000 for my executive coaching, I'll be glad to give you a $10,000 bonus. So the only reason I'm pointing that out, Jonathan, is it's not greed. It's the desire to be valuable.
Yes.
And you can tie that right back into marriage. I'm going to love you well. I'm going to value you well. I'm going to treat you like a lady, like a woman. I'm going to care for you. I'm going to respect you and your mind. By the way, I told my 2 daughters, I said, watch how I love your mom.
Yeah.
And when you go shopping for a husband, that sounds a little crude, but that's what we're doing, right? We're shopping for a spouse, a good match. I said, when you shop for a spouse, find a man who loves you at least as much as I love your mom. Now, use me, I'm at the bottom of the barrel. You can find somebody who loves you more. Great. Do you know, Jonathan, they listened to me. I look at my sons-in-law now, they're rock stars. Man, I wish I had their maturity when I married Gina. My
That's
gosh.
amazing.
Okay, so we covered.
That's so good. Physical.
Physical. We talked about professional. What you
yes.
and to always
Delivering
ask
value.
this. Yeah, always this question of how can I deliver more value? That's just.
It's great. It's great.
That's a great way to cause your salary to continue to go up. Okay, yes. And then there's the person that you are. Okay, and that's your passions. Now, whether it's reading, and possibly maybe you want to start writing some fiction or nonfiction. Maybe you've got a passion for golf or sports or whatever. That brings out a whole other aspect of a human being. What's your passions? And how do you engage others to join you? I found a lot of my passions were solo type activities. I wasn't a team sport guy. I was a water ski guy. Gosh, so many of my sports have been solo. They're not team sports. So the question becomes, what are the things you're passionate about? And are there any that you can share with others?
Mm-hmm.
So that third thing is
follow your passions.
Yeah, follow your passions. Now, you shouldn't overvalue them, because you do have to provide it, for your family. But it does make you wonderfully alive. And again, the invitation is, I'm living a passionate life. How about yours?
Yes. No, that's amazing. And I think that's the key of what all you're saying here is you have to have a life that is worth, that people want to look at and say, wow, I do want to join that adventure. If you're going to really have that moral authority to lead. I love that term that you've used, moral authority, and we've talked about that before. Can you just briefly hit on what that means and why it's so important as a leader to have this moral authority? Because I think this is a great place to kind of finish up our conversation.
That's a good question. There's an old-fashioned word called integrity, and I'm so intrigued by it. There's a book. Oh my gosh, ironically called Integrity. Stephen Carter, written back in the 90s. So you don't have to read the book. He said, let me define integrity in 3 steps. By the way, he's a law professor at Yale. Stephen Carter, fascinating fellow. He said, step 1, take time to think right from wrong. Step 2, catch this, act accordingly. Step 3, be prepared to talk about this. So when you have moral authority, you've thought about life. So you don't have to have it perfect, but you've thought about life, and because of your thinking, like you've noticed when I talked about how do we care for our bodies, I got to tell you, I don't have a sweet tooth. All of my teeth are sweet, Jonathan. I love sweets. If I could live on sweets, I would live on sweets. Oh my gosh. But it doesn't give me the moral authority to talk about healthy eating if I'm just pigging out on sweets. So the thing of moral authority is taking time to think and then acting in a way that connects you to your core values. And your core values are either going to be kindness and caring towards others or selfish towards self. Something in the middle is kindness towards self. That's what we're talking about, or good decisions towards self. When you make good decisions for yourself, it gives you the moral authority to say, come join me. My life is very rewarding. I want you to have a rewarding life. Is there anything that I can do to help you have uh, a more rewarding life?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's how that term moral authority
So good.
came, because we are all intrigued by great morale,
Mm-hmm.
and I love integrity. I love
Yeah.
to hate hypocrisy, even though if I'm going to be honest, and I am, yeah, I'm a bit of a hypocrite. You could ask my wife. I still have to say, honey, I'm sorry. I was thoughtless. Would you forgive me?
Yeah.
I could go
Well,
farther,
that's
but that
really
might be
good.
enough.
No, that's perfect. Well, and I think what you hit on at the beginning is a big part of the show of taking the time to think, actually taking the time to reflect and to think and to gain some clarity around what is important to you, what are my values, what is the way that I want to live, what is the way that I want to act, how do I want to treat others. Like it's easy to just not even take any time to think about those things.
Yeah.
But that's step one, is to really be able to sit down and get clarity on those things. And then step two would be what you were talking about of, do your actions align with those, and really putting together some sort of game plan around how do I actually want to foster a life that is living in integrity with these values and the clarity that I just gained of who I want to be. Because if I say I want to be this and I'm acting something different, then there's a gap there, and I think you lose your moral authority. And who's going to want to join you on an adventure? Who's going to want to be led by you if they see this gap of hypocrisy from who you say you want to be to who you are? So I think what you said there is really good. Think about what you want your life to be about, and then think about how you want your actions to line up. And then I think the biggest thing, because we're sinful human beings, we're going to miss the mark all the time.
Yeah.
It's a part of it, but being able to reflect and look back and say, how am I living, in terms of, did my actions reflect what I said I wanted to be this week? If we don't ask ourselves those questions, then we can easily be pretty far off the trail without even knowing. So I think that's kind of a step three there of making sure we're reflecting and asking for feedback and being humble enough to listen to those around us who are saying we're out of alignment
Oh my gosh.
in our
Hey,
moral authority.
you ought to be a coach there, Jonathan. That's good stuff. Nice job, my friend.
Just piggybacking off of you, man. It's
Oh my
amazing.
gosh.
So good. Thank you so much, honestly, for this has been really impactful for me and inspiring. And so I know it's going to reach a lot of our listeners. Is there anything else, just kind of your last charge to men in terms of leadership? Anything that we didn't cover that you just want to, make sure we just address real quick as we're wrapping up?
I'm going to just say two things. Discover your heart, discover those
Mm,
desires, and embrace the fact that there is this ambivalence of we can be selfish, um, and yet there's passions in us that are just wonderful. And so if you're willing to be honest like that, search for those passions that are inside of you,
mm,
and acknowledge that there's a part of you that you're not particularly proud of. And if you can talk that kind of stuff through with a coach such as yourself, Jonathan, it's just so doggone helpful. Get a
mm-hmm.
coach. It'll accelerate your learning so much. Gosh, I wish I had one when I was your age, and instead of waiting till I was
Yeah,
40. I didn't even know about coaching back then. I sure wish I had
right.
one at a younger age. Would have saved me a
Yeah.
lot of time.
For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that and for your time. I always want to be really supportive of you and just the listeners I have on. What can you tell us just kind of what's going on in your life, and if there's any way we can support you um, as a community here?
What's going on is I've just put together an online program, which I'm delighted for. Gosh, just delighted. It's for those guys who are leaders and who are married, and they will simply not be satisfied with anything other than personal, professional, and relational success.
Mm,
Any two of those, if they're satisfied with that, God bless them. They're just not my kind of client. I love
yeah.
working with those people. I have been accused of asking very difficult questions. But it's when we wrestle with those things, it really equips those leaders to have authentically caring conversations.
Yeah.
And so that's my passion right now. It's it's something that I'm loving. Gosh, and I'm so intrigued. I'm a coach. My clients are the stars. They're the real stars. So I get to help them just be their best. That's what's going on in my life right now.
Good. Well, and I definitely just see that in you so much. You're so authentic in the way that you care about people, and just thankful for how you poured into me and taking time. And so I really just admire that about you, and thank you for being who you are and living your passion to help men be great leaders. So
for you, my friend,
and your time.
A privilege and a pleasure to know you and to work with you. We're a privilege to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yep. It was a blessing. Appreciate you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to the Intentional Man podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review. If you are someone who is looking to take your life to the next level, accelerate your success, and live more intentionally, I would love to help. Shoot me a text at 970-430-6085, and we can schedule a time to meet to discuss your vision and your goals. Again, that is 970-430-6085. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, build a life that matters by living intentionally.